So for purposes of this seminar, you can imagine I look like the person on that photo, and that is the person who is going to speak with you this evening. First of all, just once again to thank you, Anthony, for organizing this seminar. I really hope it's going to be fruitful. Some of the things I may speak about may not make much sense right now because I understand most of you are still students. But in future, perhaps, it's going to make sense. It's going to make sense to some of the things that I'm going to speak about, okay? Can you see the screen that I'm sharing, and what does it say? Okay. Everybody can see the screen, right?
Yes, you can see your screen.
Okay, fine, great. So as you've been told, my name is Barasa, and I'll introduce myself shortly, but today we're just going to speak about disputes. Disputes are costly, especially in construction and for people like you who are engineers or are on the way to becoming practicing engineers. And when we say disputes are costly, oops, something is not working right. Give me a second. When we say disputes are costly, we can see a few headlines there. This one says the court orders KAA to pay contractor 433 million in demolition jobs lawsuit. We also have another headline there which says how Kenyans lose billions in interest paid on delayed projects. And this other one says the court bars KPC, I believe that's Kenya Pipeline Company, from paying 4.6 billion as contractors at Kem International and Oil Fields Engineering fight. The other one, state pays extra 4.7 billion for botched JKIA terminal project. So you can see, and these are just headlines from 2023 and 2024, just the past 2 years or 2.5 years. Billions and millions and billions of shillings are being lost because of disputes. So disputes arise in construction, and as engineers, you're soon going to be tossed into the construction world, and you're going to be at the center of these disputes. How are you going to be at the center of these disputes? By the decisions that you're making if you're in management positions, if you're the engineers on these projects, if you're the people charged with designing these projects or even implementing them and project management. All these are roles that you're going to be engaging in once you come out of the academia and move into industry or the field, or out there, as I'm sure you usually call it. Back in my time, we used to say out there. I still believe it's the same thing. So basically, disputes are costly and they cost a lot, and nobody likes disputes. And that's what we're going to talk about today. As you've been told, my name is Barasa. Barasa is with an S and not a Z, as Anthony said. And I'm the contracts manager for a data center company based in Kenya. I've had the privilege to work in Kenya, across Africa, in parts of Asia during my career of about 12 years now, since I was a student like yourself. So it's not a long time ago that I was a student, only 12 years ago. So majority of the experiences that you're going through, I too went through that comrade life of you understand the comrade life. I don't know how you do it nowadays. During my days, we used to have code. We used to go to the mess with a code. You pay 20 bob and you have a meal. That's the entire meal you'll have for the week. But that's beside the point. I'm just saying that I relate with your experiences for you who are comrades. And I was there as well, just like you are. And of course, soon you'll be out here in the industry and you'll be joining us. So in a nutshell, that's me. That's how I look like. And that's what I do for a living. For a living, I'm a contracts manager, but I'm trained as a civil engineer with a background in water engineering. So what are we going to speak about today? We're going, first of all, to look at Kenya's unique legal landscape. And you'll ask me, are you a lawyer, or why are we talking about the legal landscape when we are engineers? Well, I'll explain that in a short while. We're going to look at specific legal framework governing construction disputes in Kenya, including relevant statutes, regulations, and case law. Then we are going to look at dispute resolution mechanisms. As we've said, disputes are costly, so we want to resolve these disputes through different available mechanisms to avoid the cost of those disputes. Various mechanisms are available for resolving disputes in the Kenyan context, and we'll look at those. And finally, we'll look at best practices for dispute avoidance and resolution. So there's two things here. There's resolving disputes. That means once a dispute occurs, you want to resolve it. And there's avoiding a dispute, meaning once a dispute, you want to prevent the dispute from actually crystallizing and occurring. So we're going to look at some practical tips of preventing disputes from arising in the first place and for effectively resolving them when they do occur. Okay, so we start with the definition. I see there are not many of us on the call, so perhaps somebody can tell me what you think a contract is before I move to the next slide. Yes, Ahmad.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, a contract is a documented agreement between two parties.
Okay, perfect. Perfect. I think I like that description. Any other person, one more person with a description before we proceed?
A legally binding agreement between two or more parties that is enforceable by law.
I can also add, it requires to have the mutual obligations and the timeline.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for those responses. So Richard has added something interesting. I'm employed by a certain company. Are there any timelines in my contract? Or if there's no timeline, does it then make that not a contract? Because I have an employment contract. For example, you guys are renting your whether you stay in apartments or hostels. You have a contract with the hostel manager or the owner of the hostel. If there's no timeline in that contract or lease agreement, does that make it an invalid contract?
Maybe for small contracts, those which are implied, but for bigger contracts which require huge amount of money, there is that need of what? The obligation of each party. I've mentioned of the timeline. Then we need also to have the default clause. What happens if you don't meet the other party's expectations and all that?
Thank you, Richard. Now, I'd just like to clarify that the definition of a contract is very simple. It has to be an agreement. Those are the only parameters that have to be in a contract. It has to be an agreement. It has to be between two or more parties. You cannot have an agreement with yourself. And it has to create obligations that are enforceable by law. Now, there are various different types of contracts, and all those details which Richard has mentioned will come into the various types of contract. However, any agreement that creates obligations that are enforceable by law, regardless of how it's structured, is by definition called a contract. Now, you may ask yourself, why are we seated here today as engineers talking about contracts? We are not lawyers. We are not commercial people. Why is it important to us? The reason for that is simple. Engineers will most likely, as engineers, we are most likely going to go into either consultancy or construction, but for whatever the case, we'll be building something. Even if we are manufacturing engineers, or if we are textile engineers or production engineers, or even computer engineers, for example, you're going to be engaged in construction or development of one thing or the other. Now, in a normal construction contract, I am from a construction background, so I'll restrict myself to that. You have what is called a contract agreement. The contract agreement is what now outlines what Richard Moturi has been talking about, the rights, obligations, responsibilities of the party. Then you have something called the particular conditions of contract. This is normal, you'll be encountering this, and general conditions of contract. So particular conditions are what is particular to the construction site that you're engaged in, the location perhaps, the name of the project manager, the address, the postal address, communication channels, and so on. Those are particular. Then usually you have what is called general conditions, which are carried over from project to project. So if you're working, for example, in a road project by the government of Kenya, or KERA, or KENHA, or KURA, or what have you, they have their template contracts, but the particular conditions will be for, let's say, Outer Ring Road construction, and then it'll move to Nairobi Expressway. They'll have different particular conditions and so on and so forth. Now, ordinarily, the first three are prepared by lawyers, but engineers come in the next three, which is the bottom line. So the specification also forms part of the contract. If you're constructing the Nairobi Expressway, you have the specification of how wide the carriageway will be, the specification of how the specification of the design of the piers and the columns, the specification of the barriers, the specification of the traffic furniture, and all these things are contained in a specification. And ordinarily, engineers are the ones who prepare this, not lawyers and not commercial people. You also have the drawings, which define the limits to which the contractor shall engage and carry out the works. The drawings are ordinarily, even if they're drafted by draftsmen, engineers are behind the design and the development of the drawings. And finally, you have the bill of quantities, which is a document which indicates the rates and prices of the works which are going to be carried out, and to a minor extent specifying the works which are going to be carried out. And all these three are prepared by engineers. So you can clearly see immediately that engineers have a role to play in the development of a construction contract. And so you must be in one way or another conversant with the things that you're developing once you get out there in the field, or for those of you who are already practicing. Now, we've said that Kenya has a unique legal landscape. As engineers, I'm an engineer myself. I don't know all this. I got this from the internet, of course. I don't know the content of all of this, but it's good to be familiar with them. By familiar, I mean just knowing them on the surface and knowing what they speak about. We have some laws like the Civil Procedure Act, Chapter 21 of 1924, and it provides for resolution of civil disputes. So if me and Mr. Ahmad here have a problem, we are going to refer ourselves to the court, and the court will open this Civil Procedures Act because it's a civil dispute. It's not a criminal dispute. You understand the difference between civil and criminal disputes. It also defines the jurisdiction of courts and the procedure they adopt. Okay, that's one unique legal landscape. That's one act. We also have the Arbitration Act. Some of you may be familiar with the term arbitration. Now, arbitration is a dispute resolution mechanism, and so it's governed by this Act of 1995 for both domestic and international arbitration, which sets out the terms for arbitral tribunals, proceedings, and awards. It also sets out limitations of the court in arbitration. We also have the National Construction Authority Act. If any of you has done their internship or happens to work at the NCA, you may be familiar about this. It's the Act of Parliament that sets up the National Construction Authority, which is a body given the mandate to register contractors and accredit construction workers, among other mandates. Now, the NCA publishes a code of conduct for the construction industry, but mainly targets contractors. We also have many others. We have the National Building Code, Affordable Housing Act, which is quite recent and has caused some controversy, of course. And we have the Engineers Act of 2011, which you must be interested in, by the way, as engineers, because it's what governs your registration once you graduate and once you need to proceed to consulting. We have many others, and you can see all of them listed there on the screen. Physical Planners Act, National Land Commission, and all these Architects and Quantity Surveyors Act. Some of you may be engaging with them in your careers in future. And whenever you want to put up a development, you'd have, in one way or another, an interaction with any or all of these regulations which exist by law and which we must follow since we are citizens of this country. Why did I say this landscape is unique? There's no specific legislation called the Construction Act or the Contract Act that governs the contracts in construction industry in Kenya. For example, there's no single act which covers licenses, safety standards, contract law, dispute resolution, and project management. All these issues are covered in various different distinct pieces of legislation. If you go to somewhere like the United Kingdom, for example, we have one act, and it's called the Housing Grants, Construction and Regeneration Act, known as the Construction Act. It covers everything from housing, construction, redevelopment, covers licensing, safety standards, consulting. Everything is covered in that one single piece of legislation. In Australia, they have the Construction Contracts Act of 2004. But Kenya appears to have several different disjointed and complex legislation. And so if you remember what I said earlier, what is a contract? A contract is an agreement that is enforceable by law. And by being enforceable by law, that means that it is, when something happens, you have to refer to a court of law, and the court of law will open the existing and applicable laws. So that means that disputes are bound to arise because you have all these so many different laws, and perhaps some of them are not integrated, and perhaps an interpretation of one may be different from an interpretation of another, and perhaps the two parties will differ in one way or another. So there's a complex legal landscape in Kenya. And I have some case law here. I'll not go through all of them in the interest of time, but I just want to demonstrate that we have, this I just got from the internet as well. We have some parties, like this guy is called Strabag International versus the National Irrigation Authority of Kenya in 2024. They had an issue about enforcement of dispute board decisions, and the court ruled that the dispute board decisions are final. Then we had Mashiri Limited versus Kenya Airports Authority. They're also contesting about the enforcement of setting aside an arbitration award. And the final award of arbitrator was recognized and adopted as a decree of the court. We have Sogea Satom versus National Irrigation again in 2023. And it was about duty to comply with dispute board decisions. So you can see here the challenge is there's a dispute which has arisen, and there's something called a dispute board. And these parties are challenging that what the dispute board has decided is not applicable to them. And they go to court, and the court upholds the binding decision of the dispute board. Okay, and the last one was a bit different because it was about calling of performance security and other things, and the court dismissed that case. But you can see already that we have existing legislation, and we have what is called case law. Lawyers will tell you this is called precedents, or case law or precedent. So what a court has ruled before, a junior court will rely on the previous judgment or rulings of a senior court to enforce or to carry out its own decisions. And so whenever you have a situation like this, it becomes even more complex because there are many, these are only 4, but there are many and numerous case laws which exist in construction. So a court would have to rely on a previous one, of which the matters may be slightly different, who knows? And it just makes the situation a lot complex. But what is a dispute? So we've mentioned the word dispute as we've been speaking, but what exactly is a dispute? A dispute is a disagreement on a point of law or fact, or a conflict of legal views or interests between two parties. Now on the right there, you can see there's these two guys who are fervently arguing about what they're seeing. One person, they're all saying the same thing, but from different angles. And perhaps you see this with our religious books, and I apologize if this touches your nerve, but you see this with a religious book. There are people who believe there are certain ways of doing things, and others who believe there are other ways of doing things, yet they're all reading from the same manual. The same thing here. In a construction contract, you may all be reading from the same contract, seeing the same thing, but one person sees one thing and the other person sees another thing. One person sees a 6 and the other person sees a 9. And that is what essentially is a dispute. These two people have disagreed on a point of law or fact. It is a fact that that is a figure on the ground, but one person is insisting it's a 6 from his point of view, and the other one is insisting it's a 9 from their point of view, based on their interests. Now in construction, you have different interests. You'll have the contractor whose interest is to make money, and you'll have perhaps the government or the developer whose interest is to save money. So you can immediately see that these two are conflicting interests. And that is how disputes arise. And that is the definition of a dispute, a disagreement on a point of law or fact. Having established that, let us see what happens in construction. Usually the major causes of disputes in construction is unforeseen ground conditions. Now, I've given you the example of my employment contract. In employment, usually the dispute is usually about payment. My employer has not paid me when he said he should pay. I've given you the example of a tenancy contract. If I'm renting a house somewhere, usually the dispute is I've not paid the landlord when I should pay the landlord. But in construction, there are many causes of disputes which arise because of the unique nature of construction. Unlike other contracts, construction is unique in the sense that you are carrying out a construction in an area which is complex. So you have unforeseen ground conditions. You have variations. These are changes which occur. You have uncertain contract terms sometimes, cost overruns, project delays, delayed payments, which is very common in the government, at least the government of Kenya. You have slow decision-making, and you have land acquisition issues, way leaves, permits, etc. So you have, for example, the contractor who was doing the SGR, you may be aware, they needed to acquire the land from all the way from Mombasa to Nairobi and beyond, as it goes beyond. And this requires that all the people along the route are compensated, there's way leaves, there's permits, and you understand that such procedures take quite long. And so there's delays which are caused to the contractor incurs cost, and it becomes an issue for disputes. So these are some of the major causes of disputes in construction. Those are the causes, and everything with a cause must have an effect. So what are the effects of disputes? You have spoiled relations. You dispute with, you saw at the beginning of the slide, the slides that I demonstrated to you in the beginning before I started speaking. First of all, these are costly, but do you think these guys will ever want to work in Kenya again? Zakim International and Oilfields, they've lost 4.6. Do you think they'd be interested in working for KPC again? I highly doubt, because 4.6 is not pocket change. And you see here again, the state, that's we, the taxpayers, have paid 4.7 for the botched JKIA terminal project. I highly doubt that contractor would be interested in coming to work for the state again, because they incurred losses. They were paid 4.7, but I'm sure they incurred more losses than the 4.7 they were paid. And so that is what I'm trying to demonstrate here, that disputes are costly and they spoil relations. There's also the risk, the reputation risk. If you're an employer or a contractor who has a history of disputes and you're taking everybody to court or arbitration all the time, then you are bound to, be seen as a reputation risk, and you spoil your name. So those are the effects of the causes of disputes. But we are lucky because we have mechanisms for dispute resolution. Why do we have these mechanisms? It's been observed over the years that construction has many disputes, and therefore the people within the industry have come up with various mechanisms to resolve these disputes, if and when they occur. I'll list 4 of them. There are several others, but I'll just list and explain the 4. The first one is called negotiation. Now, negotiation is when it's a voluntary process where the parties attempt to resolve disputes amicably. So myself and Mr. Owino, we sit down and we discuss. We have a dispute. Hey, let's see how we can resolve it without spoiling this matter. As comrades, I'm sure you know how this negotiation goes on, because I'm sure most of you are engaged in social entanglements which require you to resolve disputes. But basically, that's a principle of negotiation. You have mediation again. So if you have a dispute, you call a third party who's neutral, who's not you, who's not me. We call in a third party, and this third party facilitates the negotiation. Now, it's no longer just between the two of us, but there's a mediator, a third party. Those of you who are around back in 2008, when we had disputes in Kenya because of elections, you may remember the mediation role that was played by the late Kofi Annan. So basically, that's the same process that occurs in construction. A third party comes in and facilitates the mediation. We have arbitration. Now, arbitration is a more formal process where we have a neutral arbitrator. So this is slightly different from mediation. Why? We have a person qualified technically or legally to carry out the judgment, but it's not a court, it's an outside of court decision. However, the construction industry has agreed that arbitration is final and binding. So whatever the arbitrator or the panel of arbitrators decide shall be a final and binding decision. And some of you at this point, I will say that some of you may be interested in arbitration as a career, and I'd encourage you to pursue arbitration. If you do not want to get into mainstream engineering, arbitration is a fruitful and economically rewarding career. So I'd encourage you to explore the possibilities of joining that line of work. I know you all enjoy deriving Gaussian equations and deriving the fluid mechanics and all those strange equations. You'll not be encountering those in arbitration, but you'll be making some good pocket change. But that's beside the point. We also have litigation. Litigation is a formal legal process involving courts, which is done through courts of law, of course, that you're aware of. But let me draw a distinction between litigation and arbitration. When we talk of litigation, first I've classified the distinctions in 6 ways: process, agreement, speed, flexibility, confidentiality, and who is the referee in the process. For litigation, the process is that it's a formal court proceedings with a judge. You're well aware of that, I'm sure, because we are quite a country which loves the courts of law a lot, so you're quite aware of that. Arbitration, on the other hand, is a private process with a neutral third party. You'll never see the proceeds of arbitration being published online. The agreement is unwilling. The parties can be forced to participate. Okay, if I take you to court, you have no choice. You have to go. But for arbitration, we must agree that we want to arbitrate the matter between us, the dispute between us. In terms of speed, litigation takes time. Again, you're aware, if you just open any newspaper or open any media channel, you'll see that there are court processes which have taken 3 or 4 years and longer. On the other hand, arbitration is quite faster than litigation. Litigation, or taking people to court, is also less flexible, but arbitration is more flexible. You can choose the venue and the time and the proceedings and so on. As for the court, you rely on the calendar of the court. Confidentiality is also, as I've mentioned, for litigation, the outcome, like the slides I showed at the beginning for Mashiri versus Sogea Satom and all the rest, National Litigation Board, I got them from the internet. It's a public procedure. The outcome of the case is public. How many millions this company has lost is public. Who did a mistake, who did a professional mistake in the course of their duties, it's public knowledge. But arbitration is confidential and private. So many people prefer arbitration. And lastly, because of the referee in litigation will, of course, be a lawyer. But in arbitration, the referee will be an expert in the subject of dispute. So if we're disputing about the construction of the SGR, surely we need somebody who understands the construction of SGR. We need a civil engineer or a mechanical engineer. We need a structural engineer somewhere, or a bridge engineer, right? If we take it to a lawyer, they may not really understand why we are disputing about a payment certificate for the chainage 1 plus, kilometer 1 plus 0.56, which is foreign to lawyers. Apologies if there are any lawyers on the call, but that's just the truth of the matter. So for arbitration, it's more preferred in the construction industry as a means of resolving your disputes. Okay, are we together up to there? Or is there anybody who has a question up to there before I proceed with the next few slides? Did I lose anyone?
Maybe a point of clarification. In the case of alternative dispute resolution mechanism, how do you manage to have amicable agreement between the parties when it comes to choosing the arbitrator and the venue of arbitration if you didn't annex it in the signed contract agreement?
Thank you, Mr. Richard, for your question. Now, Richard, what Richard is telling you, fellow listeners, is that you must annex. He's saying that without saying it. He's telling you that you must annex within your contract the procedure for arbitration or alternative dispute resolution. Within your contract, use the word annex, but it must be contained within the contract that you have decided that any dispute arising out of this contract shall be finally settled in arbitration or shall be finally settled by alternative dispute resolution method X, which we have seen from the previous slide, either mediation or litigation and so on and so forth. So you must include it within your contract. Now, for arbitration, you must specifically include it. For other means, you may not include it, but in any case, whenever there's a dispute which arises in terms of a contract, we said it's enforceable by law. So if you did not include the means of dispute resolution in your contract, for example, the Arbitration Act of 1995 specifies the recourse that can be taken. If the parties then agree that whereas we did not include it in the contract, we have now decided to take this matter and adjudicate it before an arbitration panel. The Arbitration Act of 1995 allows that. But in essence, what Richard is saying is that you must include the method with which you want to prosecute your disputes within your contract. He has also mentioned a term, alternative dispute resolution, which is what we are about to enter into. And Article 159 of the Constitution of Kenya compels the judiciary in exercising its authority to promote alternative dispute resolution. So whereas we have a dispute and we have a contract, and this contract is enforceable by law, the judiciary of Kenya says that it encourages us not to bring every matter before its benches. We can pursue alternative dispute resolution methods, which we've mentioned: arbitration, adjudication, mediation, negotiation, conciliation. There are many others which are not listed there, but they exist as well. So the idea is to ensure that you engage in these alternative dispute resolution methods whenever a dispute arises. Now, ADR, alternative dispute resolution, is a voluntary process for settling a dispute outside of court. There you go again. Back to Richard's question. If you did not include it in your contract, and then here you are, a dispute has arisen, and you do not want to move to a court of law. In fact, the courts of Kenya encourage you that you should settle it outside of court by using alternative dispute resolution methods. Now, these ADRs involve a neutral third party and can include the ones I've mentioned: arbitration, conciliation, mediation, negotiation, and even private judging. So you can get a private judge to listen to your case outside of the formal court of process. And this definition is as per the Black's Law Dictionary. Why do we go for alternative dispute resolution? Of course, because for the reasons we've mentioned: quicker resolution, less costly, and of course, the relationship will be maintained after that. Now, we said that we're resolving disputes, but we also said that we can avoid disputes. One of the ways in which you can avoid disputes is by doing proper contract administration. Again, you'll ask yourself, I'm an engineer. What do I have to do with contract administration? Ladies and gentlemen, it's your job as an engineer to do proper contract administration. For far too long, we've left this thing to lawyers, to quantity surveyors, to architects, and I'm ashamed to admit that engineers are falling in the back burner, thinking that our job is only to design and derive equations and to do drawings and not do proper contract administration. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to encourage you, as you go forth into the industry, focus on contract administration as part of a necessary skill of being an engineer. Do not leave it to lawyers and quantity surveyors. I have no bad blood against those guys. They're my colleagues in the industry. But there are aspects of the construction industries which are unique and are best understood by somebody who knows the bridge they're designing, the water structure, the water treatment plant, the data center, the road, the port. All these engineering structures are best understood by engineers. So proper contract administration should, as a first resort, fall into the hands of the engineer before it moves down to lawyers and all these other people down the food chain. How do you do proper contract administration? One, risk management. You should have in place early warning systems and advance notices on risk, and understand the risk allocation as per your contract. At the beginning, somebody mentioned that the contract should have specifications and allocation of obligations, and that's basically what we call risk. And you should understand that when you read the contract. The contract should also be proper drafted. Now, drafting is ordinarily in the domain of lawyers, but also as an engineer, you should understand some of these things such that it's clear, comprehensive, and unambiguous. You use precise language. Lawyers don't like to use precise language. And you input conflict resolution mechanisms, which is back to Richard's questions. You must have it within your contract. What shall be the dispute resolution mechanisms? During the course of the contract, and this now is to you engineers, you should have proper records. One of the things I've noticed in my career is that engineers don't like to write. They don't like to keep documents on site. We just want to do the work, and stick to our drawings. But you should have accurate documentation, communications, and agreements during the project. I'll mention something about, since you're all students, most of you are students. Anthony, is everybody here a student, or am I speaking to non-students as well?
I believe a majority of us are students, or if not all.
Okay, good. Since
Yes.
I'm speaking to you, there's something I want to mention about communication, and it mostly affects the younger engineers. I'll just mention it at the end of the webinar. It's not part of the webinar, but I just hope I'll benefit one or two people when I mention it. But that's beside the point. So we also have cost control, which is part of contract administration. So in your careers, when you venture out into the field, you'll be engaged in one or two or all of this. You may be the person in charge of cost control. They're called measurement engineers or quantity surveyors. You may be the site engineer in charge of records or the document controller. It's also an engineering role. I know and understand, as I said, I was in your shoes one day, and as engineers, we want to be designing in a consultancy firm with a high back chair, but that is not always the case. There are many other avenues where you can practice your engineering and have a fulfilling career that does not involve designing dams and bridges and deriving equations. Okay, and so those are the means of proper contract administration. And with this, you can minimize, if not avoid, disputes, because if you have proper records, then of course, there'll be little to dispute over, right? If you have proper cost control, you ensure the project stays within budget, and change orders and cash flow tracking and everything is maintained. Now, I basically have finished most of what I wanted to speak about, but I want to add this last part to the webinar. We have some issues with traditional contracting. When I say traditional contracting, it's how things have always been done historically. If you look at the graphic at the bottom, usually in construction, what happens is that we have a concept drawing designed by engineers like yourself. It moves on to schematic, perhaps, where now you consult with perhaps the contractor, or you consult with the employer or the developer. And then you do the detailed design and specification. Then you move to tender and you award, and the contractor commences. Look at this graphic. The contractor commences after tender and award, meaning the contractor is given the, say you're designing a 30-story building in the CBD of Nairobi, or within the premises of KU. You're designing a mall. Let me relate it. Let me bring it closer home. You're designing a mall within the premises of Kenyatta University. As an engineer, you'll bring in the contractor after you've finalized the concept, the schematic, the detailed design and specification, and the contractor will commence. You can see how late in the game the contractor is coming in. There's no involvement during the early stages, and there's dichotomy of objectives in design and development. By dichotomy, I mean diverse opinions or objectives in design and development. Because as I said, a contractor is out to make money, and the developer or the owner of KU Mall is out to save money. So these two, there's a dichotomy in the objectives right from the beginning. And then the contractor comes in for a project in which they expect to make money, and somebody expects to save money in that project. And that's the first bullet point up there now. It says misalignment of commercial interest. One person wants to make money, the other wants to save money. And then there's blame game. In traditional contracting, it happens all the time. I'm the contractor, I didn't know this. This is the engineer's fault. The engineer did not prepare clear drawings. This is the employer's fault. The specifications are not accurate enough. There's also minimum compliance. And of course, we have the adversarial nature of construction. Construction has disputes, fraud, left, right, and center. So those are the issues with this traditional contracting. And some people have come up with new ways which they're trying to implement. And perhaps once you guys come out of campus, those are the ways you'll find being contracted. Maybe the stuff you're being taught right now is this traditional way of contracting. But when you come out, you'll find that there are more innovative ways that are being taught. And one such way is collaborative contracting. Now, collaborative contracting is a contracting model based on the recognition that there can be mutual benefit for a project owner and project participants from a more cooperative working relationship. So as opposed to fighting, let's shake hands and see where I as a contractor can make money and see where you as an owner can save money. We collaborate. It's understood. It's not a hidden fact that a contractor is not a charity. All contractors are out here to make money. it's not a hidden fact that the developers want to save money but have the best quality. So I want my mall to be the best quality of malls in KU or along Thika Road, but I also want to save money while doing it. So we can collaborate with the contractor and develop a contract where we collaborate and form a cooperative working relationship. Different forms of collaborative contracting are partnering, where you create a partnership charter, and the charter dictates an environment of collaboration and trust. We also have alliance contracting, shared risks and rewards among all parties, which foster joint ownership of project success. Then we have something called early contractor involvement. This one is gaining pace in Kenya slowly. It's going to gain pace in Kenya, and perhaps by the time you guys are out of campus, this is what you'll be engaged with. So you may need to familiarize yourself with these three kinds of collaborative contracting. If you can take a screenshot of this screen, then later on you go chat GPT or Google or whatever, or do some research and just learn more about this, because I can only cover them on the surface in the short time slot that we have this evening. But it's important that you have early contractor involvement during the design phase. If you look at this schematic which I showed you, supposing the contractor came in here, where is the, let me see if I can draw here. Supposing the contractor came in here at the concept. This contractor has built this mall in China, they've built this mall in Nairobi, they've built it elsewhere. So they can come in at the concept and tell you as the developer, hey, Vice Chancellor of KU or the Chairman of Association of Civil Engineering Students of KU, this concept of yours is going to be very costly. Can we make some amendments here and there? You'll save some money. And I, as the contractor, because I know some suppliers, I'll make some money. That is what is called early contractor involvement. Trying to involve the contractor in the early stages, such that issues are picked up early and they do not crystallize into disputes later. So these are forms of collaborative contracting. I just wanted to highlight to you and propose to you that when you go out here, the famous out here, these are some of the ways you'll propose to your employers, your bosses, for those of you who work for the government of Kenya or other governments out there outside of Kenya, in Asia, in Europe, wherever you'll be, which I wish you all the best, that you will engage in these forms or be proponents of these forms of collaborating contracting to avoid disputes, because disputes, as we said, are unnecessary. They cost a lot, they spoil relationships, and they spoil reputations. The key features of collaborative contracts are commitment to cooperation, parties act in good faith, you have incentive-based payment. Now, as I said, there's for example, one of the collaborative forms of contracting is alliance contracting. And in alliance contracting, you have what is called shared risks and rewards. So for example, you say, if as a contractor, you finish constructing this road 3 months before time, I'll give you a 1% bonus. That bonus is an incentive for the contractor to finish early. Why? Because if the contractor finishes early and it's a toll road, I'll start collecting my revenue early, isn't it? If I'm the government of Kenya or if I'm Moja Expressway. So I'll start collecting my revenue early and I'll be able to earn more because the contractor finished early. And so you have an incentive-based payment as a feature of collaboration. You also have early warning mechanisms, to alert participants to emerging issues and allow for proactive solutions before these issues escalate. You also have governance structures. So this is different from the normal contracting that we have between two parties who will take each other to court, but you have governance structures. So you have, for example, collaboration management teams and so on and so forth. You have early involvement, I've mentioned that, and you also have waiver of legal rights. So the parties agree, we're not going to take each other to court for mistakes or breaches or negligence or small matters, unless, of course, somebody deliberately carries out a default. Having said those are the key features, I think I've concluded what I wanted to speak with you about this evening. Thank you very much for taking the time, and I'll welcome a few questions before I speak about the thing I wanted to speak about, which affects you as students. Geoffrey Makanga has posted a question. Let me see what he says. Mr. Geoffrey says, engaging a contractor early, does it mean it is a government-to-government contracting, which is single sourcing? Or how do you manage the expectations on who will win the contract versus incentive to have them share proactive solutions? Yes. as I've said, this is not the traditional form of contracting. You've seen it. You've seen it in the comments that you're making. Who will win the contract? Already, you notice that terminology. It's from the old school way of contracting. It's about win or lose, right? Now, if you have early contractor involvement, and we're not speaking of governments here only, any developer, even private developer, even you, if you're building your house in the village, you engage the contractor early enough. Now, you can have a list of contractors, right? You can have 10, 15, 20 contractors and engage them early and tell them, this is my schematic design. How do you propose to execute it? And share proactive solutions, as you said, so that you get the best solution for your issue. Now, we saw this recently, and I hope the fellows concerned are not here, but we saw this recently with the Adani proposal for the JKIA. Of course, it caused a lot of uproar because of the manner in which it was carried out. But essentially, what happens with, let me switch on my camera. Essentially, what happens with the early contractor involvement is that at that early stage, the contractor comes in with their proposal, another contractor comes in with their proposal, and you as the government or the developer, doesn't have to be government, you as the developer will look at these different proposals and weigh which one meets best the solution that you're trying to arrive at. So that is how you engage. You know, it's not single sourcing. It need not be single sourcing. Of course, there are laws in Kenya which are against single sourcing, but you also have the recently enacted Public-Private Partnership Act, PPA Act of 2019, revised in 2023, which allows this kind of thing. So these things are new and they're evolving. And of course, it will take a mind shift to get away from the win or lose. You can have several contractors on board as well. It need not be one contractor. For example, you have you're constructing a mall, as I've said, but let me switch it a bit. Let me say you're constructing a toll road or a water treatment plant. You have a contractor who's specialized in civil works, and on the other hand, you have a contractor who's specialized in water treatment. Why not engage both of them? Collaboration is the key. So the collaboration contracts are a mind shift from the existing traditional ways of contracting, and they'll require a lot of shifting of mindsets. It's not my concept, you've said your concept. It's not mine. I didn't initiate it. I'm only an advocate of collaborating contracting. And you guys, when you get out into the industry, that'll be what the world will be talking about, because the voices are bubbling under right now. We've had so much disputes in construction, and we're moving towards collaboration as a form of contracting. So I hope I've answered your question satisfactorily. I saw a hand, Razoa. Yes, Razoa, Miss Razoa, please.
Thank you. Hope I'm audible.
I can hear you.
Yes, so I have a question. My name is Nanjala, but I will start by stating what you said earlier. You said arbitration is a fruitful and economically rewarding career, and we should venture into that. So, considering that insightful assertion, how can civil engineering students leverage on their technical background strategically transition into and excel in the field of arbitration? Specifically, what key areas of study, professional development, and practical experience should we prioritize during and after our civil engineering education to effectively qualify and establish ourselves as competent arbitrators? The second question.
Yes, Razoa. Just 1 second, I note that down. Please, before you proceed to the second one, I have a short memory. Allow me to look for my notepad. I note it down before you proceed to the second question. Just 1 second. Okay. Okay, Razoa, second question.
The second question, beyond the fundamental technical knowledge, what postgraduate qualifications or professional certifications in dispute resolution are most highly valued and practically beneficial for a civil engineer aspiring to become an arbitrator?
Perfect. I love those questions. Yes, I love those questions. Adon?
Okay, the third question. With the ongoing focus on infrastructure development in Kenya, are there any emerging trends in construction? Yeah, in construction contracts or project delivery methods, for example, the PPPs, that are significantly impacting the nature and complexity of disputes? Yes, those are my three questions.
Okay, thank you. I'll answer those before I go to who else had their hand up. I'll answer those first. They're very interesting questions, actually, and they're quite beneficial to you, ladies and gentlemen. So the first question was arbitration, how to become or how to pivot from a technical perspective as an engineer to become an arbitrator. 1, knowledge. 2, skills. 3, experience. So when you guys get out of campus, ordinarily you'll start your hustle as engineers. Some of you, I mean, this is the reality of fact. Some of you will be luckier than others. Others may not be so lucky. You may go to a small Chinese farm here where you sit at the door as a storekeeper. Some of you may go into the bigger consultancy, and some of you may land into, you know, the government projects, mega projects, if they'll be there when you guys complete campus. During my time, I come from a luckier time, actually. Back in my day, we had mega projects. Majority of the people I studied with landed in the so-called mega projects. We had all those SGR, the Thika Road at the time. Thika Road was being constructed. What else was there? All these mega projects, because of the regime which was there at the time. And it encouraged us, because we landed in the appropriate places where we could practice our craft and hone the skills which we learned. So the knowledge, the first one is the skills and the experience, depending on where you land on across your career. But worry not, all these careers start in the same way. Yeah? Mine started in the same way as well. So don't worry. Wherever you land in your career, you get as much knowledge, skills, and experience as possible, regardless of whatever it is. Whether you're a designer or you're a site engineer, or you are working as a storekeeper at a Chinese farm because they don't want to trust you with the engineering design, it happens. Get as much skill as you can and knowledge and experience. Once you have a sufficient number, you'll be the judge of how much is sufficient in engineering, the technical aspects of engineering. Then you can pivot and now get the skills, knowledge, and experience in arbitration. And the route is simple. First, you get the knowledge. There are many online courses of becoming an arbitrator. Some of them are here in Nairobi, others are international and online. And you study to become an arbitrator. You study to become an arbitrator. You learn the rules of arbitration. You learn the rules of contract management. You learn the rules of law, legal aspects, of course. And that gives you an advantage, because I can guarantee you, very many engineers can study the law, but very few lawyers can study engineering. So you study those. So skills, knowledge, and experience. And once you gain those in sufficient quantity, and you'll be the judge of the sufficiency of that, 3 years, 5 years, I don't know, you now pivot into arbitration and contract management. So the trajectory of your career, Ms. Razoa, should start on site. That's where you should start. Know what happens on site. You'd be very lucky if you get your first internship on site and not in an office with a high back chair somewhere. It will set you apart from many of your peers. Then from there, you can pivot to management roles. And from management roles, you can move into contract management, administration, and finally arbitration, where you can study and get the knowledge. Now, one of the bodies which offers this knowledge is the Chartered Institute of Arbitrators, the CIARB. You can type that online and you'll see the cost. It's quite costly, of course, but if you're lucky that you have guardians who sponsor you, you can study those things as soon as you finish campus. And once you study, you get the certificate and you hustle your way into the industry. Your second question was beyond the fundamental knowledge. I think I've answered that in the course of answering the first question. Skills and experience. Beyond the knowledge, you also need the skills and the experience. Now, skills are learned, and that's what I wanted to talk to you guys about after the seminar. Please don't leave. I must talk to you guys about it. Skills are learned. Your knowledge is what your teachers teach you, or what I'm sharing with you right now. This is knowledge. I'm sharing with you knowledge. And what your lecturers share with you, that's knowledge. But skills are honed in the field. If you're a soldier, you'll go to recruit training school. They'll teach you how to hold a firearm. But when you go to a battleground, that is where you gain skills and experience. With ongoing focus on infrastructure in Kenya, what are the innovative ways? There's the PPP you mentioned, public-private procurement. There's collaborating contracting, which I've mentioned. It's gaining speed and traction. There's offsite manufacturing. It's not gain speed. Oh, I see in construction sites in Nairobi, we have a lot of what do you call it? Ready-mix concrete being fabricated or being prepared offsite. We may soon move to precast beams and pretension and all those things where a whole building is assembled offsite. And I think there was a company which tried to do this. Was it in Mombasa? 3D printing. All these are innovations that perhaps maybe your final year projects, that can be a good, Razor, that can be a good topic for your final year project. Innovation in construction. So all these new technologies or appropriate technologies are coming up, and it's a good idea to keep abreast with them. But the ones you've mentioned, PPP and collaborative contracting, definitely are gaining speed in Kenya. I hope I've satisfactorily answered your question. May we have any other person? Michael, please.
Thank you. My name is Michael. I'm also a finalist student. I have 2 questions. The first one, the concept of collaborative contracting, you say that it is dependent on the good faith of the parties. So has it been tried before? And is it true that you can expect the parties to be acting out of the goodness of their hearts?
Yes.
The second question, one of its elements was the early warning system. So can you give us an example? Do you look for maybe things that can provoke a dispute, or what are these early warning systems? Yeah, thank you.
Good, brilliant questions. So the issue of good faith. Now, even in the contracts we use ordinarily nowadays, there's always the aspect of the parties shall act in good faith, but nobody ever acts in good faith. And I've said it's because of competing interests. Now, your question is fundamental to the success of collaborative contracts. The parties must act in good faith. You must, by entering a collaborative contract, you must enter it with good faith. Has it been tried? Yes. There's a very successful project and it's the biggest project, I believe, in Switzerland. You may Google it. Let me just type it in. Let me put the link in the chat. It's called the CERN project, the CERN project. Now, this is a nuclear research project, and it's the largest project in Switzerland. Now, what these guys are doing, they're trying to, well, it's all scientific and all that, but they're trying to build a nuclear collider, which will help scientists understand the beginning of the universe. Now, that's all abstract to me, but that's what they're trying to do. This is something which has never been done before in the world to that scale. So ordinarily, all these contracts that we have disintegrate at that level of complexity. So the parties agreed, guys, let's collaborate here and let's work together. If this thing succeeds, all of us will have succeeded. And they've agreed to use a collaborative contract. So yes, collaborative contracts are being used in Saudi Arabia, in Dubai, collaborative contracts are being used. Kenya and Africa, we're playing catch up. And that's why this seminar is important for you guys as the future engineers in this country, not to play catch up, but to be the people at the forefront of spearheading some of these ideas, which are tried and tested as well. It's been tried and tested and applied in the biggest project in the world, the one I've posted in the link. It's the biggest engineering project in the world, and they're using a collaborative contract. I don't know which form of contract they're using, but I do know they're using a collaborative contract. Yes, early warning systems. Now, early warning systems simply means that you have your notices in place, and you have your ways of resolving the notices, and you have a management structure of resolving the notices of something that happens. So if I as a contractor encounter COVID, right? You remember 2020, if you are aware enough, in 2020 there was COVID. It impacted the supply chain, impacted construction sites, there were lockdowns and everything. Now, ordinarily in that era, what contractors would do would be to make claims. Hey, I can't work, I need my money, pay me. But in a collaborative approach, you want to give an early warning that, hey, Mr. Employer, This warning has been given by the World Health Organization. It's going to impact me in method A, B, and C. Can you come down and sit with me and let's agree on how to resolve this issue early enough before it impacts the completion of this project? So that's the idea of early warning. It's no longer about notices and claims as we're used to. It's more about good faith, let's collaborate. Again, it's very abstract and it requires a mind shift from the adversarial nature of construction that we're used to. We're used to an adversarial nature of construction, but more and more people are shifting to collaboration. And the 15 of you on this call, or the 21 of you on this call, would be privileged to be among the first implementers if you ever adopt any collaborative contract that comes your way along your career. I trust I sufficiently answered your questions, Michael. Any other before I move to, thank you. Any other before I move to what I wanted to demonstrate to you guys? And we close the seminar. Antonia told me I have 30 minutes. I think I've exceeded. Good. So, yes.
So I have two questions. The first one, how does the choice of a contract type, whether it's FIDIC or the JCT or the NEC, influence the conflict resolution mechanism within construction projects? And then
Yes.
the second question, being someone who has worked in a number of mega projects within the African region, how does cultural factors influence conflict resolution approaches in construction?
Wow, I love it. You guys are asking very interesting questions. So the first one is more technical. I'll answer it very quickly. How does the choice of contract affect the dispute resolution mechanism? Now, JCT, FIDIC, these are contracts that you'll encounter in your career. They all have prescribed ways of dealing with disputes. I can't go through all the dispute steps, but they have prescribed ways. And of course, they differ. For example, FIDIC is more complex, legalistic, and dispute prone. It's actually designed to be a dispute contract. NEC, for example, is written in simple language. I don't know how quick I can get the NEC contract here, but you can see NEC versus FIDIC. Oh, I can't get it quickly enough. But generally, basically, what the choice of contract affects how the dispute resolution will be done, because the way the contract is structured is different, the dispute resolution mechanisms, the way they're structured are different, and so on and so forth. So yes, the choice of contract determines how the dispute will be prosecuted by way of how the contract is structured and the dispute resolution mechanism within that contract. Your second question was cultural. Now, I find that very interesting because yes, I've worked in different cultures, and I worked in Indonesia between 2019 and 2022. And one thing I noticed, there's a day we went for a meeting, and I found that it's rather peculiar. The meeting was to take the whole day. Would you believe for the whole day we sat down and nobody spoke? People were having tea, people were chatting here and there, but not about what brought us for the meeting. And I was surprised. And we were told, book a hotel, we'll continue tomorrow. And I asked myself, continue what? And we've done nothing. So the next day we started again. The whole morning we sat, and finally at 12 o'clock, we were told, okay, guys, we need to break out into different rooms to discuss the strategy of how we are going to approach this. So we broke out. And finally, on the third day is when we actually now sat down and resolved the dispute. Certain cultures across the world are less abrasive, less aggressive. So cultural factors come in and they play a big part. You come to a place like Kenya, I don't know, there's this joke about Tanzania. Tanzania atakwambia na kuomba tafadhali nikushike. Polisi wa Tanzania atakwambia na kuomba nikushike tafadhali, and so on and so forth. There's that running joke, that urban legend, that cultures are different. And in Kenya, polisi atakwambia kijana unafanya nini, ingia kwa Mariamu. There's that aspect as well, and it plays out in construction, and you'll see it in your careers. When you sit, for example, with certain cultures, the Eastern cultures, they're less direct, they're less aggressive. When you sit with the Western cultures, they're more direct. If a meeting is about a meeting, you start it on minute 001. You don't go into other things. And yes, so cultural influences are there, and it's good to be culturally aware. Those are things which are not taught in class, and that's what I talked to Razoa about. Razoa, these are only things which are learned in the field, and you learn them by going to that Chinese site and learning how they operate. You come from there, you go to an Indian site and learn how they operate, and you go to a government project and see how long decisions take to make in government. And all these are cultural influences, and they influence how decisions and disputes are resolved within the construction industry. That's a very interesting question. Cultural influences in construction. I could speak a whole day about it. That's it. Yeah. So I think we are at the tail end. I hope you've learned something. Even if you've learned, the things I've spoken about will make sense 5-6 years down the line. So worry not if I spoke too fast. Worry not. There's something I've said, and 5 years down the line, you'll remember, yes, this guy in that webinar I attended mentioned this thing. So this is where I'm applying it. I see. So worry not. That is the life cycle of a student. Now, before we break, I just want to share something with you guys. I want to share this thing. This is a lesson outside of what we've talked about, since you've told me most of you are students. I want to share this. You can see that screen. This is an attachment letter. This guy wanted an attachment. Who has not spoken in this meeting? I want somebody who's not spoken to just read it down at the bottom, please. Paul Rogers.
Hello, Woi, please help me, but attachment, please.
This is an attachment letter, well structured. I've blurred out who it was from, but they say at the bottom there, Woi, please help me, but the attachment, please. That's one. Here's another one. Wait. That one. Look. You once told me to send my CV. Ndio. Guys, you're going to come out of college. You're going to be job seekers. Again, the trajectory for everybody is different. The life path for everybody is different. Worry not. Some of you will land through your networking and connections, will land plum jobs. Others will tarmac more than others. That's the reality of life. Worry not. It doesn't matter. But you should be skilled as a student in communication. I can guarantee you, the guy who says, "Woi, please nisaidie nipate attachment," nobody will look at it twice. You told me to send my CV, ndio hiyo. That does not communicate anything about this student. Look at even how the file is saved, guys. cvdoc.pdf. If I download that and you sent it to me on my WhatsApp and I download it, and Paul Rogers is the one who sent me, and tomorrow I meet somebody and somebody says, I need an engineer. Do you have anybody? I'll start searching. I remember Paul Rogers sent me, but I'm starting to search which one was what was the title of the document he sent me. So one of the things you can do as an engineer, and this one is not going to be taught in your class, but I'm giving you this advice here because, as I started by saying, I was once seated in your position and I understand the struggles and the realities. One way to set yourself apart from the rest is having proper communication. When you save your CV, save it with at least your first name or your initials and the date on which it is relevant. I hope you do have CVs at this stage of your career. So if you don't, go tonight and prepare one, even if it's one page, where you studied, what you've done, your interests, and so forth. Prepare one. But save it under your name. Michael CV 2025. Paul Rogers CV 2025. So that when you send it to somebody when you're seeking a job, they can remember, Paul Rogers sent me a CV. When I search my documents, Paul Rogers, here it is, Paul Rogers CV 2025. That's number one. Number two, when you're communicating with people who are in a position to network with you or to share these opportunities with you, a good thing you can do is communicate clearly. Woi, please nisaidie. That's how we speak, even though tunabonga huku nje. That's how we speak out here, right? But when you're in a professional setting and you're seeking a favor from somebody, it's a good idea to present yourself properly. Just type it out, use ChatGPT or all these tools. In my day, we didn't have ChatGPT. You guys have all these tools which assist you. In my day, we didn't even have high-speed internet. This call was not possible in my day. We literally had to carry brown envelopes in office to office. Brown envelopes, like that one. Brown envelopes, office to office, knock on doors, speak with people. We didn't have email in my day when I was at your stage. Well, we did have email, but in 1 or 2 cyber cafes. So this, I just wanted to point this out. It's not part of the seminar, and I hope you don't take offense, but take it as positive criticism, because these 2 documents came from students just like you. How will you guys, as KU Association of Civil Engineers, set yourself apart from the rest? Communicate properly. Dear sir, we spoke last week. We met at event X and Y. You had asked me to share my CV with you. Here is a copy of my CV. If anything comes up, please let me know. PAP. It's a professional method. Dear group, dear residents. The other one was from an estate group. So dear residents, my son is looking for an attachment, and this is his CV. Dear resident, I'm looking for an attachment at Kenya Rural Roads Authority. If you hear of anything, here's my CV. So just communicate properly. We can leave the other form of communication to TikTok and Snapchat and all these others, but at least in a professional setting, it sets you apart to speak, communicate very clearly. I hope you don't take offense with that message. It wasn't part of the seminar, but I just felt that somebody here may benefit from it, and you will be the better for it. Thank you so much for your time. Unless there's any other questions, thank you, Mr. Owino, and all the students who found time to join us. I hope you've learned something today, and I hope we'll be meeting out here. If you meet me or see me somewhere, don't hesitate to say hi and remind me where we met, because we all meet many people in a day. We all forget, but if you see me and I remember me, or if I meet you and remember you, I'll be happy to interact with you out here. Thank you very much. Cheers.
Hello. Thank you, Engineer Barasa. That was really an amazing session. A question I can ask is, for us who say are interested to learn more about FIDIC contracts, basically more about what you've presented, are there resources, or where should we look at if, say, we want to have some introductory deeper knowledge of what you presented? Are there resources, books, maybe video courses? Specific YouTubers you'd recommend, something like that?
Yeah, thank you, Ahmad. Soon I'll be launching my own FIDIC Academy. It's not, I'm still working on the website and everything. Soon I'll be launching it. Perhaps you'll be able to enroll in it. But there are many others. Unfortunately, they are quite costly. FIDIC Academy itself, if you go to www.fidic.com, they have a course online there. There are several others. I mean, a simple Google search will lead you to them. The only unfortunate thing is that some of these are quite costly. But you can go to Coursera. I don't know if you know that one. Coursera. I'll type it in the chat. Coursera. You may be familiar with it, right? Coursera. It offers some free courses, so you can study for free, but you'll only pay for the certificates. Okay, there's one called edX. I've typed it also on the chat. There is, which one else? I think MIT have a free course. So these 2 are the ones I can vouch for, because you study for free and only pay for the certificate, which is a distinction for many others where you have to pay before you start studying, and they're quite costly. So if you just want the knowledge, you can study. Then when you're ready with the finances, you can then make the payment. But I mean, they're quite costly. Some going to the region of $2,000, $3,000 to study these things. So yeah. But I'll compile a list and share it with Vincent. I'll compile a list. Sorry, I'll compile a list and share it with Anthony, not Vincent. I'll compile a list and share it with Anthony, and perhaps he can share it with you guys, and you'll see the cost and see which ones you can plug in, if that's okay with you, Ahmad.
Yes, thank you, Jimmy.
Good.
Okay, is there any other person with a question? Okay, it seems there is none. So, Michael, please take it up. The session is yours.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Vice President. As has been said, my name is Michael Owiti, the current project coordinator of the association. I want to take this opportunity to thank you, Engineer Barasa. It's been an eye-opening webinar. Personally, I did not know that I can actually take up a career in arbitration. I normally thought those are fields that we leave exclusively for the lawyers and all the other litigation specialists, but thanks to you now today, I have known that it is actually a field that one can actually lead a life fulfilling career. So thank you very much. Let me also extend my gratitude to the students who have found time to attend this webinar. Yeah, it's not common to find people attending more so at night. People have other engagements, but thank you for creating time. Also, as Da Vinci says, learning never exhausts the mind. So, engineer, be rest assured, we shall be looking for you time and time again to come and share with us your vast experience that you have accumulated so far. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Michael. So the session has officially come to an end, and I believe everyone can leave at their own pleasure. Have a
Cheers,
lovely
guys.
day.
Enjoy.